Now that you know how to maintain curly dreads, let's get you started on making them. There are several techniques to get a curl into wool. However, I find the best results that last the longest come when you use the washing machine and dryer method. Unlike using the washing machine method with straight dreads, which can be disastrous, this isn't as risky because, one, your dreads are already felted, so they're kind of already, in a way, the way they are. And then number two, they are curled around a rod, so the worst thing that can happen is they can fall off the rod and get kind of squiggly, and then you just throw them back in the wash and just go through the cycle again, and then they'll go back to your nice curly shape. And so it's not as risky as making straight dreads in the washing machine. So don't freak out. Okay.
If you want curly dreads, they're a little bit more permanent. What you can do is get a pipe cleaner. Pretend this is a pipe cleaner. And you have your roving stretched out like this. Alright, nice and even. And then you want it to go right here. You have your pipe cleaner in there, and you can roll that guy up in there. And then roll your dread out, palm rolling, and then you can curl it with your own hands because there's a pipe cleaner inside of that. Do not use the washing machine method with pipe cleaner dreads. Don't do it. And then you can have a little bendable dread. However, there are downsides to that. It's pokey, it's dangerous, it can bother you in airport screenings. Having a pipe cleaner in your dreads adds weight to your dreads, which can be bad if you have weakened hair. Also, if you laid on your pipe cleaner dreads, then that would flatten them. So these curls are resilient without a pipe cleaner. They'll go right back into shape, but if you put a pipe cleaner in them, then they're not so resilient anymore. If you want to connect two pipe cleaners, you can just twist them around each other at the very ends, like twist them a whole bunch. Or then you can make them like this. Like that. But it'll have a little hinge. So there may be upsides to having your pipe cleaners, like you can have vertical hairstyles. But as far as long-term wear, I think it's just better to have the
curly, regular guys. Okay, so we're gonna go on and learn how to make the regular curly dreads. Let's go. We're going to start where we left off with well-felted straight dreads. If you don't know how to make straight dreads, go back and watch my previous videos and then jump right back in and join us here. However, I do have one thing to add. If you want to make a slip-proof rolling surface that's also portable, what you can do is get a lap desk or some kind of a board that's waterproof, and then you can get a towel and stretch your towel on top very tight and then clamp it there with clamps. On the bottom, you can put the clamp sideways so that your lap can go there without you getting poked. Now when you roll your dreads, you'll have a much bigger space and it'll all stay nice and tight for you, and you won't get your lap wet. This is going to make sure your towel doesn't slip and slide everywhere. Yay! Making your job a lot easier. Now to get started, you're going to need some kind of a curling rod. You can go out and get curling rods. These are Conair hot sticks. I got these at a thrift store, and I also owned an older set of these, and these work just fine. You can heat it up and then curl them, but you don't have to. These come with two different sizes. I didn't use these smaller ones. Instead, I had two sets of them, so I just used all of these bigger purple ones. What's great about these is that they are very long. You don't want a super short one because you probably can't twist a whole thick dread around that. So if you have a nice long one like this, that'll work great. You want something plastic or silicone. You want something that can withstand heat and water and agitation. So these will do just fine. You don't want anything that's going to leave little fibers in your dreads, so avoid foam and things like that. If you want to try the hot sticks, you can find these on eBay for about $10 to $30, or check out your local thrift stores. Sometimes they carry these. That's where I got this one. If you want something cheaper with more work involved, what you can do is make your own curling rods, or pay me and I'll do it for you. What you can do is simply cut them out of dowels. You buy some dowels and then you cut them with a Dremel or a saw or anything you can use to cut wood. Be mindful that wooden dowels will make a large racket when they are in the washing machine and especially the dryer. So keep that in mind. Do not be doing this at night when people are trying to sleep. It'll keep them up. You want to make sure that your rods are long enough to curl your entire dread around. Some of these are kind of thick and they might take up a lot of space. So if you can't find rods that are the right length, you can make your own out of wooden dowels. If you want 70 dreads, you don't have to have 70 curling rods. In fact, you kind of want to do these in smaller batches. You want to curl in about a batch of 10 or less. So you could make about 10 or 20 curling rods and be able to do your work just fine. Have one batch going in the washing machine and then have that go to the dryer and then have a new batch in the washing machine while that's in the dryer and then just keep them going. Next batch, next batch, next batch, until you have all of them done. So don't feel like you need to have a curling rod for every single dread you want to have. The diameter of your rod or dowel is going to determine how big your curls are. If you want bigger curls, get a bigger rod. If you want tinier little curls, get a very skinny rod. You can get the exact same curl by having the same diameter. The hot sticks are 1/2 inch in diameter, and so are the dowels. If you can't cut the dowels yourself and can't find somebody to do it for you, sometimes the hardware store will do it for you for free or for a small fee. So ask the place where you bought the dowels if they'll cut them for you, and make sure you have the measurements with you so you know how long you want them to be and how many dowels you're going to need to have the right amount of rods. There's also the option, if you're a complete weirdo, you can make square dreads. To make square dreads, get a square dowel and then wrap your dreads around that, but don't twist them when you do it. Just like leave it loopy. It'll end up a little bit flat, and you can also needle felt the corners to be more pointy if that's what you want. I'm using a Dremel with special accessories for cutting wood. You can also use a hand saw or anything else for cutting wood. Be very cautious and follow instructions when using power tools. Make sure that you have safety glasses and proper breathing protection because you don't want that wood dust getting in your lungs. While you're cutting, make sure your hair is pulled back and that you don't have any dangly jewelry that might get caught in the machine. This can be very dangerous, so don't have dangly stuff.
I cut this dowel into 13 pieces, and now you have several different sizes of rods. Little tiny ones, and long ones.
Get your dreads ready and grab your rods. We're about to start curling. For a double-ended dread, find the center of the dreadlock and align it with the center of the rod. Keep holding the center with one hand while the other hand works to twist the dread up and away from you like this, and that's going to eventually buckle the dread so that it wants to naturally wrap around the rod. If you don't twist the dread while it's going around the rod, it's going to become like a flat noodle. So you want to twist it so it keeps that nice circular shape. As you're stacking on the layers of twisted dreads, make sure that there's no spaces or gaps between the dread layers. If there are, then lint and stuff can go between them in the washing machine and dryer, and that's really hard to remove, so make sure that it's a tight coil so that it's easier to clean off later. If your tension is too tight when you're twisting, then that's going to make it want to resist and go back a little bit. So don't over twist it. Just twist it enough that it naturally feels tight and that it buckles. Keep twisting until the whole dread up to the very tip buckles and wraps around. You want to make sure even the very tip has lots of tension so that it doesn't become fluffy. Once you reach the very end, you can tie it off with a rubber band or a hair tie or something that's not going to leave little creases. So once you have the end tied up, now you want to keep the tension on the center and you're going to flip the rod around and start working on the other side. Maintain the tension and then just keep twisting it the same way as you did before until the other side buckles around and curls around the rod. And then work all the way until you reach the end of the other tip. Maintain the tension there and then tie it off. Now that you have both of the ends tied, you can start adding ties around the entire body of the spiral. Make sure that you have it very well secured. Don't tie it too tight that it leaves indents unless that doesn't bother you. If you're making a single-ended dread and the loop is big enough, you can fit the loop into the rod. Pretend that this is actually a single-ended dread and not a pathetically tied cut dreadlock. Okay, continue. Put this inside there. Or if the loop is not big enough, what you can do is just have it on the side against the rod and tie it so it's secure. Then start twisting your dread until it buckles and have it go all the way coiling around the rod until you reach the very tip, maintaining the tension all the way to the tip. Then tie off the tip along with the rest of the dread, making sure it's very securely fastened. Tying it up well is going to make sure that it survives in the washing machine and dryer. Remember, it's going to go through hot water, agitation, and heat. So make sure your bands are able to survive all of that. Don't use things like metal twist ties because they have pokey ends and that can cause a little bit of damage to your dreads if it's in the washer and dryer getting agitated about. Also, they don't tend to have very good grip and they fall off. There is the option to cut up an old t-shirt into strips and then use that to tie up your dreads to keep them secure without leaving little indents. However, I do recommend, if you are going to do this, to wash the scraps of t-shirt first so that they don't leave little lint balls on your wool. For the next step, you're going to need a pillowcase. One that doesn't leak dyes, and it can't be a mesh bag or anything because you don't want the wool fibers to escape into your washing machine because it can mess up your pipes, and you don't want lint to come into the pillowcase because it can get onto your dreads and make them very hard to remove later. Now throw your coiled up dreads in your pillowcase and then tie it off. Make sure that you don't tie it too tight because you do have to unravel it. Some people use zippered pillow protectors. However, there is a risk that the zipper can come open just a little bit. So what I do recommend is a regular pillowcase or just tying the pillowcase or pillow protector in a knot, or using a hair tie to tie it up and then double the edge over and then tie that again to have a very secure lint-free trap. However, the knot is hard to unravel when it's wet, so it might be easier to use the hair tie method to tie it off. Do these in batches of 10 or less. You don't want a whole lot because then a lot of lint can build up, and also if there is any accidents, you want to minimize the amount of dreads that are affected. Every washing machine and dryer is different, so you want to make sure you know what to expect from your washer and dryer. I do recommend doing a test batch first, or just do like one dread in the washing machine with this method and see how it responds. You don't want to do all of your dreads right off the bat just in case you didn't follow a step or something like that. You want to make sure you're doing this right, so do a test dread first. Now throw your dread pillowcase into the washer. Now along with that, you're going to want a small load of laundry that is a similar color. Make sure these are items that don't shed lint and also don't leave dyes. You don't want them dyeing your dreads. And also be aware that dread dye may come off onto your clothes, so don't dye them with anything you want to keep forever. Avoid things like towels or fleeces or fluffy things that give off lots of lint. The reason why you have other laundry along with your dreads is because it's going to help agitate it so that it felts better. Put the laundry on top of the dreads. That's going to help them get more agitated. And you want to add no more than 1 teaspoon of soap. It's good to use the same soap that you use for palm rolling. You can also use that in the washing machine, but you can also use laundry detergent. However, laundry detergent isn't technically good for wool in the long term. You can use it, but don't use any more than 1 teaspoon of any soap when you're doing this, because too much soap can make it felt knot as well. So keep it minimal. Set your washing machine to hot wash, cold rinse on a small cycle for either the heavy or the normal amount of time. Open open up your pillowcase and examine your dreads about every 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that there's no unwanted dye transfer and that everything's going just right and that the coils are still coiled on there and held on tight. If your washer locks itself, then you don't have to worry about it because there's really nothing you can do. You want to make sure this doesn't happen, and you want to also make sure that the ends do not come off, so you want to make sure that the ends are very well secured. Fix the broken ones and put them back with the others. Once the cycle is done, open it up and check on the dreads. If you want very secure curls, you can opt to wash these over and over and potentially over again. That's going to help it felt extra well into that coil shape. I like to wash them at least once, but I always dry them at least twice to make sure they're thoroughly dried and heat blasted. Now you can tie up your pillowcase again and then throw this entire load of laundry into the dryer. Make sure you check your lint traps. Now set your dryer to the hottest it will go for the longest it will go and then let it do its thing. You can check on it every 5 to 10 minutes to make sure that they survive. Once they're done in the dryer, then you can go ahead and open up the pillowcase and take out your coils. Remove the bands from your coils, but keep them on the rods for now. You're going to go over them with a fabric shaver, also called a clothes shaver, and you're going to get all of the lint and debris off of them. Once the dreads look clean and lint-free, then you can remove them off the rods. You can try sliding them off, but if they're silicone, it might be a little tricky. Don't pull too hard on silicone if it's cold because it can snap, making your end come off. So don't do that. You can also just unravel it by taking it off, you know, like a telephone wire or something. If they're well felted, they should maintain a coil shape, not a spiral shape, when you take them off of the rod. You're going to want to stay in this tight coil shape. That means that they really felted. If they're a loose spiral when you take them off the rod, that means they weren't felted as well. And you might want to put them back in the wash again. If you're making a double-ended dread, then find where you want the root to be and pinch it. You don't have to have the root be exactly in the middle. You could have the root be off to one side, which would make one side shorter and the other one longer if you don't want all of them around the same length. So find where you want your root to be and pinch it tightly, and then you can use either a rubber band or a metal twist tie to tightly keep the pinch. That way it's going to maintain the memory of that little pinch. Then that makes like a natural bend where the root would be, so it kind of looks like two natural dreads instead of your hair being braided onto one continuous dread. So instead of being like, it'll be like, key. You know what I mean? Now grab your coiled dreadlock by the root and you are going to gently pull on them at first. Pull on them gently, going all the way down until they're about as loose as you want them to be. If it's still too tight of a coil once you pull on it, you can pull on it even harder. And then keep pulling on it harder and harder until it reaches about the curliness that you want. If your spiral is still too tight, what you can do is stretch your curl across a metal dowel and then tie each end off with metal twist ties. Then get a steamer, be very careful because steamers are extremely hot, and then go over it to make sure that it loosens up and gets stuck in that loosened spiral state. Do not put your hand above the steam at any point in time. It'll be bad news for you. If you don't have a steamer, you can get a pot of hot water and just run the dowel over that steam. Then you can blow dry that or let it dry overnight and then install it the next day once you have that little pinched root. However, the steamer step is not required. Before installation, I like to organize my dreads according to their attractiveness and their length. That way you can have the prettier dreads on top where they can be seen, and you can hide the uglier dreads underneath. And I can also kind of go according to the length. So I can be like, oh, do I want a short one? Here's a short one from the short group. Or here's a long one from the long group. Now your dreads are ready for installation. You can remove the little band thing or the metal twist tie off of your root, if it's double-ended, when it's ready to be installed. So there you have it, curly dreads. If you want to see more videos from me, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Scrinkle1111, where I put out new videos every other Tuesday. And I have plenty more dread videos and other things coming up for you in the future. My name is Tiainen. Thank you for watching.